is Showcase 2 for Educational Technology, and the learning outcome I have for this is that students will be able to identify and correctly use nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs in sentences, including plural noun, action verbs, descriptive adjectives, and proper adjectives. And I'm giving them a choice board assignment, which will be choosing 3 activities in a row, similar to tic-tac-toe, to demonstrate the understanding of nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Here is that choice board, and we have a Google Forms quiz, teach a partner, screencastify explanation, self-assessment form, sentence writing task, practice worksheet, parts of speech T-chart, Canva poster, and real-world writing task. Here's the first one. So it's a Google Forms quiz, and it will help them to identify nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs in its sentences. This includes multiple choice and a short answer. Here is that link to the quiz. So it's 10 questions. It has a few multiple choice, which is this one, which is which word is the noun in the sentence, the dog ran across the yard. It will let the students pick which is the correct answer, and they will get 1 point for that. And they get 1 point for all of the multiple choice ones. So these next few is multiple choice. Here's a 2-point multiple choice, which is which sentence contains a plural noun. It's a harder question, and it allows the students to determine which is the plural noun in this. And we have this question, which is another 2-point question. Which word is a proper adjective? We have tall, fast, soft, and American. And that's 2 points, but it's also a harder question. And then we have 2 short answer questions. Write a sentence that includes 1 noun, 1 adjective verb, and 1 adjective. And they will put their answer here. That's worth 5 points in this one as well. Identify each part of a speech in this sentence. The happy dog barked loudly. And they will determine which word right here is the part of speech. And then they'll put adjective, noun, verb, and adverb for each one. And then we have one more question. It's one of the 1-point multiple choice. Which word is an adverb? Happy, dog, slowly, or walk. And they'll submit. Then we have teach a partner, which is explain parts of speech to a partner and help them create examples. Write down notes on a piece of paper and have them sign it before you turn it in. And I am requiring them to write down notes and have them have their partner sign it, just so that I know for a fact that they did that assignment. Then another choice is the screencastify explanation. They will record themselves giving a mini lesson for 3 to 5 minutes on the different parts of speech and how to use them. And I also attached a link to Screencastify so that they have the correct website. Next, we have a self-assessment form. So they will create a new Google Doc, and they are going to rate their understanding on using and identifying nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and then they will also write 1 goal for improvement for each. The next is a sentence writing task. They are going to write 5 original sentences, and each must include 1 noun, plural at least once, 1 action verb, 1 descriptive or proper adjective. We have a practice worksheet. Here's the link to the worksheet. It says label parts of speech and given sentences and correct mistakes. So here is that worksheet. They can either print it out or do it on a Google Doc and submit it to me. And then part A, it includes labeling each word in the sentences below as a noun, verb, adjective, or adverb. First sentence is the happy dog ran quickly. So they're going to then determine, is happy a noun, verb, adjective, or adverb, what dog is, what ran is, and what quickly is. And that's the same for all 5 of these. And then on part B, they're going to fix the mistakes. So I'm going to have them rewrite each sentence correctly. The dog quick ran, she happy sings, etc. And that's that worksheet. And then we have the parts of speech T-chart. So I'm going to have them create a T-chart with 4 sections, nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. And they are going to list at least 5 examples for each category. And for the noun, 1 of them needs to be a plural noun, and for the adjective, 1 needs to be a proper adjective. Then we have a Canva poster, and here's that link to Canva, just again to make sure they have the correct link. They're going to open the link and then click on Doc, so going back to that link, it'd be Doc right here. And then they're going to create a visual poster explaining all 4 parts of speech with examples and definitions. The last option they have is a real-world writing task, which they will write a 5 to 7 sentence paragraph for a fake news article something kind of funny or unrealistic, and then using all four parts of speech correctly. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. We have 3 that are technology related that use a technological source, which would be the Google Forms quiz, as that is a link to a quiz using a different website. It's using Google Forms, and it's this right here. And then we have the Screencastify explanation, which takes them to Screencastify. They use that tool to record themselves. And then we have the Canva poster, which is using Canva. They'll open up Canva, again, different website, and they will create a poster on that website and learn how to use the tool, which is formative and which is summative. We have the self-assessment form that collects data as it's them explaining where they're at that understanding. That would be collecting data. And we also have the Google Forms quiz, which collects data. It collects data for me to know where they are at in their understanding as well. So both of these are collecting data. We have the teach a partner assignment, which is summative, as it is explaining, parts of speech to a partner. It's summarizing it all and teaching that partner. So that'd be summative. As well as the Screencastify explanation, I feel is summative, as it's also teaching, having them teach. The sentence writing task is formative, because they're writing sentences and using those skills, and then the real world writing task is also formative for that same reason. Last thing now, on the choice board part, which is why I chose each, and I just highlighted all of them so that we can see. So the first thing I chose while making this choice board was which was going to be easy, medium, and hard. So we have our easy, which I'll go over first. That would be the Google Forms quiz. It's pretty easy. The practice worksheet, again, not too hard, and then the Canva poster, which the Canva poster is a really creative one for them to do, but it's also a fairly easy assignment. Next would be the medium. We have our Teach a Partner, self-assessment form, and parts of T-chart. The Teach a Partner is more challenging since it's them teaching them, but it's also just briefly going over notes as to what each part of speech is, so it's still not quite hard yet. And then we have the self-assessment form, which again is more of a medium assignment. The only reason it wouldn't be easy is because this is actually looking at having them identify where they're struggling at and what they're doing good at, and as far as if they identify and can use it. So that's whereas like the Google Forms quiz, it's them just taking a quiz, but this one they're actually having to think about where they're struggling at. And the last one that's medium would be that parts of speech T-chart, where they're creating a T-chart. This one could also be identified as easy, but I'm personally thinking it's more of a medium assignment because they are having to give 5 examples of each category and come up with all of that on their own. And then our red ones, which is hard, that would be the Screencastify explanation. What makes this harder than the Teach a Partner is that this is actually them having to create a miniature lesson, so it's not quite just having notes as to what is each. They're actually having to come up with a lesson of their own. And then the sentence writing task is hard because they're writing 5 original sentences that must include each of this. It's going to be harder than that parts of speech T-chart, because on the T-chart they're just putting words down. This is actually coming up with sentences that have all of this in one. So each sentence has to have all of this. So that's where it's hard. And then that real world writing task is also hard. They're having to write a full paragraph, come up with a fake news article, and use all 4 parts of speech correctly. So the reason I chose each is, first we'll go over the tech. So I chose Google Forms as one of my technology uses because Google Forms is great for making quizzes. You can choose the correct answer on it. They can easily access the quiz, and it grades it for them. I love Google Forms for those reasons, and it also is very simple for them to use. So yeah, it evaluates them fairly well. I chose Screencastify particularly with making a miniature lesson, just because Screencastify is free, so they can easily use it again. And then also this assignment alone, having them create a miniature lesson, is fairly engaging for them too, and it makes them have to learn how to use each part of speech, because they are then the one having to teach it. And then as far as my last tool, which was Canva, I use Canva personally all the time. It's very easy to use. It will engage them because they're getting to be creative with it. And that is why I love Canva and chose to use it. For the other tasks, I chose Teach a Partner because it's easier than the Screencastify, but also if they do both, then it won't be too much additional work since they kind of coincide with each other. So that's why I chose those two. And I put them next to each other so that if they were to do this row right here, they would get a green, yellow, and red, and also these two overlap. And then that self-assessment form, it's just essentially a harder version of the Google Forms quiz. And then parts of speech, T-chart. I love T-charts. I think they are great for learning, so of course I would include that in one of my assignments. Let's see. The sentence writing task. I personally think it'd be great for students to do this, just because they are having to think and apply each of those parts of speech, and then figure out how to put each part of speech into a sentence. Practice worksheet. It was just another great assignment to have, to put a worksheet on there. It's kind of a filler spot on a choice board. I feel like all of them have a worksheet, so that's why I chose that. And then I created the worksheet myself to make sure it was engaging for them. Lastly, that real world writing task. Creating a paragraph. It's a simple assignment, but also very challenging in the sense that you have to put 5 to 7 sentences on there. So that is why I chose all of them. 2 questions that I'm going to read over for this. Question 1 is, do tools teach students to self-monitor their learning successes and struggles? So I answered yes, technology tools can help students actively monitor their own learning by giving them immediate feedback and clear insight into their progress. For example, using Google Forms, students can instantly see which questions they got correct or incorrect. This allows them to recognize patterns in their mistakes, such as confusing adjectives and adverbs, and reflect on areas they need to improve. This connects to the ISTE standards for students, especially Empowered Learner, because students are using digital tools to track their progress and take ownership of their learning. It also aligns with the UDL principle of action and expression, as students are given multiple ways to demonstrate understanding and reflect on their performance. Additionally, tools like self-assessment checklists support UDL's emphasis on self-regulation, helping students identify their strengths and struggles. Overall, these tools encourage students to become more independent learners by making their learning visible and understandable. Question 2 is, do tools help students goal set and develop strategies for improving learning? Yes, technology tools support goal setting and improvement by helping students identify what they need to work on and plan next steps. For example, after completing a Google Forms quiz, students can review their results and set specific goals such as improving their understanding of verbs or practicing identifying adverbs. This connects to the ISTE standard of Empowered Learner, as students use technology to set personal learning goals and reflect on their progress. It also aligns with UDL principal engagement, particularly in supporting sustained effort and motivation, because students are actively involved in improving their own learning. Tools like self-assessments and reflective activities also support UDL's focus on executive functioning, helping students plan, monitor, and adjust their learning strategies. By combining feedback with reflection, these tools guide students in developing meaningful strategies to improve their understanding over time.